Heather. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Hill. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently based in Haines, Alaska, which is home to the Tlingit people. Great. So I was asked to talk about coho salmon. So we will be going in a little deep on coho salmon and how we fish for them up here in Haines, Alaska. Tlingit is storage container for salmon. So we have a lot of salmon come through our river. We are home to all 5 species of Pacific salmon. So this is sort of the back of the of a silver or coho salmon, and just for identification purposes, you can see the spots on the upper lobe here, and then that really thick tail part, which is pretty important. And then also the silver color is really how you can determine, as well as the spots on the top of the fish there. And then 13 to 16 anal rays as well. So the other really important thing on these silvers is you can tell by their sort of the coloration of their mouth and their teeth. So obviously the white teeth, but then the edge of their gums are darker color, sort of a blackish color. And depending on where they are as they're coming up, you'll start to see that sort of metamorphosis happening in their face as well. And so a lot of times where we are fishing, we're catching them right after the ocean. So they're coming in still having sea lice and a bunch of still sea urchins on them as well. So it's pretty neat. So they're very silver. As they get further up into the river, they start to change a little bit and change their colors as well as their face. So one of the best parts, and one of the reasons why I love fishing for coho, is because of how they react, and just the fish itself is a very strong fish. And you will typically, once you hook one of these cohos, they will jump in the air and do a lot of acrobats and be very, very, you'll know they're on your line. That's for sure. And it's really fun. And it all depends on the season. Last year we had a really bad season. Typically we will go, we'll catch a good number of them every day. And last year I caught one. So it was very, very slow. And last year my now husband caught 0, and that's like not like him. And we fished really hard the whole season. So, but typically you should be able to catch a few a day. And then, some seasons are pretty slow, like last year. This one was from a couple of years ago. And this is right outside of our house, right down the street there.
Come here. Okay.
Okay, next slide. So their habitat, so they are, as all salmon do, they come in from the ocean after a couple of years being out and come back to the spawning grounds of where they were born. This is a photo of the Chilkoot River, which is on the other side of town. And you'll see the river in the forefront here, and then there's a huge lake. And a lot of them do go into the lake to spawn. And then there's all the way in the back of that picture, the river continues, and a lot of them do go up into that river. A lot of the fish that spawn in the lake are mostly sockeye and pinks. And then you'll get some that go up into that river there. And this was taken, we were fishing this day, and it was in, this was in sort of December-ish, early December. And this is probably around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. It's already getting dark. So a lot of times what we try to do is, how do you fish? Where are the fish sitting? Most of the time they're moving, especially right when they come in from the ocean. They're trying to get upstream as fast as they can on the high tide. And so you can target these silvers and cohos in fast moving currents. Really deep holes. We always try to look, the river is always moving every year. So when you go out there, it's hard to tell. Last year, the fish might have been in this one spot all season, this one deep hole all season. And the next year you go out there and there's 0 deep holes right there. So a lot of it is exploring the river every single year. We don't have spots where, we don't have holes that are there every year. So a lot of it is walking up and down the river, wading up and down the river, finding these deeper holes or these benches that get deeper as you go. And we'll fish the seams of those benches and try to get into some of those deeper holes. And we try to fish on the high tide. The incoming high tide is the best time because they're coming in, they're getting pushed in from that water. And then if it's the lower tide, then we'll try to find some of the deeper pockets to see if they're sitting there for a little bit, hanging out. So the equipment that I use up here is a single hand rod. Um, we also have folks who do a lot of spey casting up here as well. But for the most part, in the fall, I use an 8-weight single hand rod, a sink tip. I always need to have a sink tip here because you're trying to really get deep into those holes. So I'll have a sink tip on, and you can use type 3 to T14 sink tip with a floating line. Sometimes if it's really high water, I'll put a full sinking tip line, a full sinking line on there. And then about 12 to 15 pound mono as well. And oh yeah, that's my little. Okay, so one thing about this picture is the bear spray. Here we always have to carry bear spray because while we're fishing for fish, so are the bear at the same time. And during this time, particularly when the coho come in, is also when the chum salmon come in. And we have a large run of chum salmon in the fall. And there's an area upstream about 10 to 15 miles called the Bald Eagle Preserve. And it's a preserved area for the bald eagles because every year in the fall, about 4,000 to 5,000 bald eagles come from all around the country to wait for the chum salmon to spawn and die and then eat. And so, because we have such a late season run, all these eagles come around, they wait for the salmon to die, to spawn and die, and then that also brings out a lot of the bears as well. Okay, so rigging and tackle. So like I said, we typically use sink tip to a loop knot. And then you have your leader, mono, up to your fly. What we also do is we don't have a fly shop in town, so a lot of times we will make our own flies and make our own leaders. And so I made one here for you guys to see. So this is basically 30-pound test here, right? So you'll have your line, here's your loop, your sink tip, and then you have your 30-pound test all the way to a swivel here. And then we put about 15-pound test on there. And once we get that, then we'll have some sort of fly to tie on the end there. And so the flies that I typically use for coho season, I really started, I stinking love this fly. This is the double bunny. I don't know if you guys can see that well. Let me try to get that light away. So this is the double bunny. It's really cute. It's adorable. White and pink are great, and it has a weight. The eyes are weighted. So I have been using this a lot, and this got me my only fish last year. We also use Dalai Lamas with a trailing hook. I like using these trailing hooks a lot. You can see that there. So we'll use Dalai Lamas. Again, pink and white is a good color. And then you really never can go wrong with the Clouser minnows. And we'll do either chartreuse in white or olive in white or black or pink and white. Some other flies that you can also use are leeches. Egg sucking leeches are really good as well. The articulated leech black is best. We don't use too much purple, but that's a good idea. Then the Dalai Lamas. Flesh flies are really good. You'll see a lot of, all of the salmon are decaying and dying. And then there's a lot of eagles that pick at them and the bears and so forth. So the flesh flies are really good if you start seeing a lot of dead salmon all around. And then poppers and polywogs, which I've never used that before. All right. Okay, fishing techniques. So, like I said, a lot of times you're going to try to find them either in the swift moving currents or in these deep holes. And so the silver salmon are really attracted to fast moving things in the water that are like kind of really in their way, like, and it irritates the hell out of them. So they're these like jerky movements, these erratic like things that are kind of like just in the water column. They really like that, and they want to move it out of the way. And so you're basically casting a little bit upstream, letting it float down, right? And then you're going to strip in a little bit. And you want to keep your rod tip sort of in the water, pointing as your line goes down that river, goes down the river. And then you'll see the swing there, and then you're going to strip in a little bit. And sometimes I'll get a lot of fish coming in on the strip at the end there. And so, sometimes you think, okay, well, I'm done with that cast. I'll just strip in, but really keep going, paying attention, because that strip might be just the part where just that jerk or that movement in the water makes them really want to grab it or try to move it out the way. What else do we have here? So the other thing about stripping and retrieval techniques, sometimes I'll do small strips, sometimes I'll do long strips, sometimes I might do slower strips, and it really just depends. And I try to do it all and see if I'm getting some bites, but maybe not any, like a couple of bites, not that much movement, I might keep trying that strip a little bit, like that same sort of length and pace. And I might try that a little bit more. If that's not working, then I'm going to go to a fast strip if it's a slower water. Or I might go to a slower strip. It all depends, but trying and sort of trying out different ways while you're on the water is probably the best. And there's no real, like, you have to do it this way, it's going to work every single time. There's nothing like that. And then Heather, you're going to do this one because you have had some great success on wogging, and we do not really wog here. So I'm going to turn it over to you for this.
Okay, awesome. Wogging. Oh man, I actually did 12 days of Wogmas a couple years ago because trying to be super goofy and like, do you wog the line, or friends don't let other friends wog alone. I mean, being totally cheesy and silly. And wogging is pretty fun. It's just, basically like a pink mouse, a pink popper, or some really, at times, there's certain fisheries that you're trying to decide or try to choose which fly actually won't work when you're trying to wog. So anybody that hasn't tried topwater for either coho and or pink salmon, definitely give it a try. But this is just kind of a traditional bass popper. So if you have some poppers, I've wogged with green poppers, all kinds of, it's just topwater. And I'm just going to show what the wog leader example is, and I'll just kind of quickly talk about it, and then Katie will be up next. But as far as the wog leader, it's pretty simple. You're going to be using a floating line. Just do that loop-to-loop connection, and really you're using a pretty short piece of mono, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, kind of your typical streamer length setup, and then 12 to 15 pound test. And basically what you do is you try to, this is a point where you really want to try to cast as far as you can, because I always like to say the more real estate you have, the better. So if you can cast far, get it out there, let it sit, and you can actually retrieve it in a couple of ways. You can pop it, so you can bring it back. Now, if you've ever popped for bass, sometimes it's like some people say pop and pause, right? So pop and then pause, pop and then pause. Now, I have found personally for coho and or silver salmon wogging is that it helps to have a continual V. So what I mean by that is when I'll usually put my fly rod underneath my arm, and then I just pull like this, and I'm creating I'm creating basically the fly to V or come towards me. And it's actually pretty fun because you can see the salmon come behind and start to wake, especially if it's in shallow water, if the tide's just coming in and that the river's fairly shallow. And you watch them. And that's the hardest part is like, don't set the hook until they eat. and you get all excited and all anxious, and you're going to miss fish. We all miss fish. We all lose fish. This is a part of it. But basically, you're just trying to create a V, have it come, and you can double hand, or I'll do a single hand pop. And then bring it towards me. You'll see that V, the fish, like you literally see the mouths come up, eat it, and then you set the hook. And then just like Chris said, those acrobatics, like they jump and they're fun, and you just pray that you actually are going to get it into hand. And yeah, wogging is really fun. It's, again, pink salmon will eat topwater flies as well. So if it's a pink year, and pinks are every other year in certain areas. So for us right now in like Pacific Northwest, it's a pink year, but in Alaska, I believe last year was a pink year. Is that correct? Yeah. So they switch every other year, but just something to kind of add to your toolbox and your arsenal of ways to fish. And again, you want to cast as far out as you can. You want to strip that fly in and then wait for the fish to eat the fly. That's like the hardest thing to do because it's so exciting. But it's really fun. So Chris, when I come up and visit you, I want to try to wog.
Yes, now I'm excited. I was like, Heather, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't do that here. So now I want to wog with you. And I encourage everybody, whoever is coming up, if you guys ever see yourself in Southeast Alaska, definitely reach out to me. Come up to Haines for the Coho season. It's bananas. It's super fun. Also, I see some of my Maryland friends on here, Maria and Kathy. So I'm just waiting for you guys to come up.
That's awesome. Anything else that you want to add, Chris, about silvers? Is there any tricks to landing them, or anything like when they're jumping? How do you keep a rod bend, or how do you kind of?
You definitely want to keep that rod bent, and you want to get tension. You want to continue to have tension at all times on that line. The one thing that I say, a lot of people get really excited when there's a big fish, because these are like, 10 to 20, 25 pound fish. So they get super excited and want to just reel. Just stay calm. Remember, it's going to be a long fight, and have patience, and, tire the fish out. Eventually you can reel that thing into the net, and it's just amazing. So yeah, I would say, just stay calm and don't yard it, because once you yard it, yeah, you're gonna lose it and break. Your line's gonna break somewhere, whether that's at the knot on the fly or at your leader or whatnot.